latest weather, traffic, and news updates online at 560theanswer.com. Now, from the Signature Bank Studios. If you're looking for the latest news, insight into what it means, and the sharpest opinion, there's only one station in Chicago where you can turn, and it's this one. We're AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. Alvin Bragg is the they. Alvin Bragg and his prosecutor, Yoren, are really pulling out the stops to try to put Daniel Penny behind bars. It's disgraceful, frankly. On Friday, Penny had the manslaughter charges against him dismissed because the jury could not come to a unanimous decision on the manslaughter charge.
Right. So it wasn't considered a hung jury. I mean, they went to him twice and said we can't. We're at an impasse.
Well, that's the interesting part, is because the assistant district attorney Yoren asked the judge, and this is the quoting, the reporting on this, don't tell them it's acquittal on count one, only that it's dismissed. Penny's lawyer, defense lawyer, this has never been done before. It would encourage prosecutors to overcharge in the grand jury with the option of withdrawing if hung under coercion, which is a great point. The judge, I'll take a chance and grant the people's application. I'm going to let them go to return and consider count two on Monday. A manslaughter in the second degree is dismissed. You're free to consider count two on Monday. So that's what's happening today, starting today. He shouldn't have done that. The judge shouldn't have done that, in my view. So now, we talked to Andy McCarthy about this last week. Now they threw in the lesser included offense of criminally negligent homicide to try to, there's a lower evidentiary standard. And, I mean, not beyond reasonable doubt, but in terms of the components of the crime. And so now they're trying to, they included that, as McCarthy explained, because they were worried the manslaughter charge may be a little aggressive, but they got to get him on something. So they have this lesser included offense. So now we can only hope that whoever is not going along with this railroading of Penny will continue to not go along with it. And at minimum, we'll have another hung jury and Penny can walk. And I doubt there'll be much appetite to prosecute him again. That seems to me where the case is at. For more on this, we're pleased to be joined, and other topics, we're pleased to be joined by Chadwick Moore. Chadwick Moore is New York Times bestselling author of Tucker, the definitive biography on Tucker Carlson. You can read his musings at his Substack, substack.com @Chadwick Moore. Chadwick, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Hey, great to be with you guys. Thanks for having me.
You're a New Yorker, so your take on the Penny case.
Well, being on a jury in a place like New York or any of these big liberal fiefdoms, it's like no different than being on a jury in the Jim Crow South. The community expects a certain result, and you're expected to deliver that result for the community, much like with the Trump trial and many others, even seem that way with Derek Chauvin in Minneapolis. So it's most interesting that had he been convicted of manslaughter, and even if he does get convicted of this lesser count, I hope that there would be a federal civil rights investigation into Bragg's office for many reasons, but especially this case, because after Daniel Penny was arrested, another man on the subway was riding the train with his girlfriend.
Right.
A vagrant came up and harassed them, and this guy stabbed the vagrant to death on the train multiple times in front of everyone. He got off, no bail, no charges. Well, that guy was black, and Daniel Penny's white, so the obvious racial question comes into this. It seems to be selective prosecution. A lot of people were saying that, well, surely there's a lot of people on the jury who ride the subway. They want to feel safe. They're not going to convict him. No, I think it goes beyond that. It's become political and racial, and it's really scary.
And then you consider the fact, too, that when NYPD showed up, he still had a pulse. And they didn't perform CPR. I mean, they did chest compressions, but they wouldn't do mouth-to-mouth because he was dirty. And they thought they might get hepatitis or AIDS.
Yeah, that's right. He was a lot. Daniel Penny put him into restraint. And if you remember, another passenger helped Daniel Penny.
Yes.
We don't hear anything about that guy anymore.
He's Hispanic.
Yes, exactly. So it was a community effort on the train to restrain this guy. And you're right, he was alive when the police showed up. And people keep saying using the word chokehold. I don't know if what he did. It was a restraint of some sort, and he was still alive when the police showed up.
Yeah, and I think and Penny testified to this too. He could see his chest compressing, meaning that he was able to breathe, and it was this restraint and so forth. Also, too, I think at trial, and I didn't follow this, in a very detailed way, but I think at trial there was also competing expert witnesses in terms of cause of death as to whether or not the restraint was the proximate cause of death or his general health condition and whatever was in his system was the proximate cause of death in an excited situation. So I mean, there's that as well. But I mean, your point about bringing up the other case, we talked about that too. And this is what's sort of fortunate and unfortunate. It's unfortunate because it puts a racial charge in this, and that's exactly what these identitarians like Alvin Bragg want to do, and it's polarizing. And it's fortunate in a sense because the same people that are saying Penny should have never been prosecuted also said of the case involving that black guy defending his girlfriend, he shouldn't have been prosecuted either. We agree. So you have this multiracial coalition of people who say, number one, the law should be enforced. Number two, I'm going to protect myself and my loved ones. And then you have these, ideologues of the left that want to play racial politics with it. And I think there's less and less appetite for what the racial politics that Alvin Bragg is playing.
Yeah, that's true. And even, the guy with the knife, I mean, stabbing someone multiple times on train is so much more gruesome than what Daniel Penny did. At the bottom line is, should you be allowed to defend yourself and the people around you? Absolutely. At minimum, it's illegal to carry a knife in public in New York City. So there was a charge right there. If you want to say, yeah, you can defend yourself, but just can you not do it with a knife, please? That might be one element, but there is a coalition of everyone saying, yes, you should be allowed to do this. But these identitarians are also, they're statists. So it's, all power to the state. No one should be able to defend themselves. And at the same time, you have demoralized police forces. The police in New York haven't even been able to identify the guy who assassinated that CEO yet, which is so insane to everyone.
Mm-hmm.
But these are the people we want to protect us. And you are, by the way, not allowed to protect yourself, and you will go to jail if you try to protect yourself. You have to rely on the demoralized, possibly incompetent police force. So we keep defunding.
What's your view on Eric Adams's pivot, at least here? I mean, he is continuing to talk about the migrant situation in New York City. He's, when he was asked recently about whether Trump should pardon J6 defendants, he basically punted and said that's up to the president. I mean, he's really making a clear move away from the sort of radical left base of the party to which he currently affiliates. If he still currently affiliates, I'm not sure.
Yeah, if you recall, he was a Republican for a spell. He switched parties because to show his how much he was disaffected by the Democrat Party at one time. Then he came back to being a Democrat. I think that his stance. He's getting a lot of flack from the far left and the usual people in media for his stance now. Of course, when he ran for mayor, he was a proud supporter of sanctuary cities.
Right.
I hope he regrets that. I hope he was just doing that to virtue signal to the far left. But I think I don't know how badly it'll hurt him politically, because he seems to be speaking for the silent majority. That even a lot of these far left coddled liberals in this city, they can't say it out loud, but they see what's happening and they see the city being overrun by illegal immigrants. They're everywhere, and they don't want this. So I think he is kind of speaking for a silent majority. I don't think he's just doing this to suck up to Trump for some sort of pardon, which people are saying. I think that he does have a kind of natural contrarian streak in him when it comes to the Democrats, and he sees how terrible this is for New York.
Well, if he's not, I mean, there is that benefit. I mean, I hate to be cynical when it comes to politics. Yeah, right. But Eric Adams, he's pivoting in Trump's direction, particularly on the immigration issue, the illegal immigration issue. He is talking more about the system, the political, the justice system, I should say, being politicized, being weaponized. He's not saying he's a victim of that, but he's certainly intimating it. And these are federal charges he's facing. So having Trump as an ally could come in handy politically.
Oh, for sure, yeah. We can't forget that all of these charges came out after he began speaking out against Biden's immigration policy and how badly it was affecting him. And he's charged with getting upgraded flights and stuff. It's not the major corruption cases that we think should be happening with a lot of the Democrats. So, and he has been quite nice to Trump lately, but he's, never necessarily been like a rabid Trump hater in the way that someone like Mike Bloomberg or Bill de Blasio was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I wanted to get to your piece too about trans, the trans mafia there. You have this Do No Harm group that is putting out lists of the states that are getting the most medical reimbursements for puberty blockers and trans surgeries, as well as specific hospital systems and specific doctors. You have more detransitioners coming forward and filing suit. Recently, Kaya Breen has filed suit against Dr. Joanna Olson Kennedy, who is one of the more high-profile proponents of transing youth. So I wonder, between the notoriety, the pushback in sports against men playing women's sports, and some of these detransitioner lawsuits, if there really will be a turning here of marginalizing that radical gender identity cohort of the left.
The huge proponents of it are this tiny group of people in power on the left that are absolutely addicted to trans. I mean, this whole transing of youth thing, the boys and girls sports. I mean, the UN of all places just released a report of 890 medals and awards and scholarships that have been stolen from women by men and women's sports. The general population was never on board with this insanity, which just sort of popped up about 5 years ago. And but the people in charge don't seem to be willing to let go. They're totally addicted to transgenderism. And, a lot of people pointing out that this was one of these issues that may have really swung mothers and married women against the Democrats in the last election. But you have people like Jen Psaki, you have senior campaign staff for Kamala, John Oliver, wannabe comedians like that, all pushing back and saying, no, this is a minor issue. We don't need to respond to it. It's fine. Let's just keep the course on transgenderism. And that report that you cited from Do No Harm showed in the last 5 years, it was something like $120 million was made off of transing 14,000 children across the country. We weren't really exposed to this. It was really the Biden-Harris administration where all this became very federalized for the first time.
I wanted to get your take too, just on the identitarian politics. It's encouraging to me to see. In some respect, I know that the legacy media is not going to report on this because it's infringing upon their space. But it's encouraging for me to see some of the nominations that Trump has made for cabinet posts or important posts like FBI director are not being bandied about by Republicans from an identitarian perspective. We're not talking about Scott Bessent, the nominee for Treasury Secretary, as the first gay Republican treasurer, for example. We're not talking about Kash Patel as the first Indian American FBI director. We're just talking about Scott Bessent, and we're talking about Kash Patel. I'm glad that Republicans are showing some restraint on playing that stupid game that the left does.
Yeah, that's a great point. There was especially a time when a lot of Republicans, especially when all the rhetoric about Trump supporters being racist or whatever, that a lot of Republicans felt the need to showcase. No, look, we're not. We promise. Look at these people in our coalition. I swear to God, and that was, but it's the right way to go. You don't have to acknowledge it, and the media won't acknowledge it, even though everyone can see what's going on.
Chadwick Moore, New York Times bestselling author of Tucker, the definitive biography on Tucker Carlson. His Substack, substack.com/@ChadwickMoore. Chadwick, thanks as always.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Chadwick, and he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560.
Merry Christmas, you filthy animal.
The Answer.
Amy Jacobson and Dan Proft here, and we want to tell you about our 2024 Food for the Poor campaign.
If you've listened to the station and to our show for any length of time, then you already know about Food for the Poor. They are a nonprofit, faith-based organization